I stood beside my mother's casket, accepting quiet condolences, when my husband leaned close enough that only I could hear him. "You'll need the new code when we get back," Ethan said. I turned toward him slowly. "What new code?" "The security code." His mouth curled into the faintest smile. "I changed the security code on your $42 million beach house this morning." For a second, I honestly thought grief had made me mishear him. "My mother's funeral seemed like the right time," I asked. He shrugged beneath his tailored black suit, as if we were discussing dinner reservations instead of my family's home. "I figured there wasn't any reason to wait, and before you make this difficult." His voice lowered another notch. "If you don't like it, we can end this marriage." Around us, people embraced relatives, wiped away tears, and spoke softly about my mother's kindness. A minister thanked everyone for coming. My aunt was comforting my younger cousin. My husband chose that exact moment to tell me he'd taken control of my home. He watched my face, waiting for panic. Instead, I smiled. Not a forced smile. Not an angry smile. Just enough for him to believe he'd already won. His shoulders relaxed immediately. He mistook my silence for surrender. What he didn't realize was that the question racing through my mind had nothing to do with the new security code. It was much simpler. Who had convinced him that the beach house was still using that system? The funeral reception continued around us, but everything suddenly felt strangely distant. People approached me one after another, sharing stories about my mother. They talked about how she'd always remembered birthdays, how she'd quietly paid for a neighbor's medical bills years ago, how she'd somehow made everyone feel like family. I thanked each person sincerely. I even managed a genuine smile when one of her oldest friends hugged me and whispered, "She was so proud of you." Ethan never left my side. Not because he wanted to support me, because he kept studying my reactions. Every few minutes, his eyes drifted toward my purse, where my phone rested. Every vibration made him glance down before I could. He wasn't wondering whether another family member had called. He was wondering whether my mother's attorney had. That alone told me more than any confession could have. For the past 3 years, Ethan had slowly become the person everyone admired. He always volunteered to handle the complicated things. He insisted on reviewing investment statements because I was too busy. He offered to speak with contractors because he understood property management better. Whenever friends complimented him, he would laugh modestly. "I'm just trying to take some pressure off Vanessa." Everyone thought he was protective. Only my mother ever looked at me afterward and quietly asked, "Are you sure he's helping or replacing you?" At the time, I defended him every single time. "Mom, you're reading too much into it." She never argued. She simply nodded and changed the subject. Now I wished I had listened more carefully. Ethan slipped another hand into his pocket. "I've got the new code saved right here," he said casually. "Once we leave here, we should head straight to the beach house. It's time we started moving forward." Moving forward. Those were his words. Not grieving. Not honoring my mother. Moving forward. "As you wish," I answered calmly. He blinked, almost surprised by how easily I agreed. Across the reception hall, I caught sight of my mother's attorney speaking quietly with several relatives. For just a moment, our eyes met. He gave me the smallest nod before returning to his conversation. Ethan never noticed. He was too busy believing he controlled what happened next. As he proudly reached into his pocket to show me the phone containing the new security code, only one thought echoed through my mind. Who had told him the house was still controlled by that system? The last of the funeral guests began drifting toward the parking lot, their conversations fading into respectful whispers. Ethan rested a hand lightly against my back. "Come on," he said. "There's no reason to stay any longer." I looked once more at my mother's photograph resting beside the flowers. "I'll say goodbye." "You already have." His answer came too quickly. He wasn't trying to comfort me. He was trying to leave before anyone stopped us. I walked to the front of the chapel alone and placed my fingertips against the polished wood of my mother's casket. "You always told me people reveal themselves when they think they've already won," I whispered. Then I straightened my shoulders and walked back toward Ethan. "I'm ready." His smile widened. The drive to the beach house was unusually quiet. Normally, the 2-hour drive along the coast was one of my favorite routes. My mother loved pointing out tiny fishing villages and hidden beaches she discovered decades earlier. Today, Ethan filled every silence. You know, he began casually, that place could be incredible after a renovation. I looked out the passenger window. Oh. We opened the kitchen. He gestured confidently as if he could already see it. Replace those old hardwood floors. He continued before I answered. The master suite should be expanded. I'd probably knock out 2 walls. Probably. Not we. Not if you wanted. He was speaking like an owner, giving instructions to a contractor. I simply nodded. He mistook that for agreement. The further we drove, the more confident he became. I've already been thinking about which architect to hire. You have. Of course. He smiled. It's really our home now. I turned toward him for the first time since we'd left the cemetery. Our home. He laughed softly. Vanessa, we're married. His tone carried the quiet patience of someone explaining something obvious to a child. There's no point pretending everything is separate forever. I watched his hands tighten slightly around the steering wheel. This wasn't about marriage. It never had been. It was about ownership. Looking back, the warning signs had been scattered across the past 3 years. Whenever we attended investment meetings, Ethan insisted on answering questions directed at me. If Vanessa doesn't mind, he'd say with a charming smile, I'll explain. At dinner parties, he'd casually joke that I hated dealing with finances. I'd be lost without him, he'd tell people. The strange part was that I had built my entire career negotiating multi-million-dollar commercial real estate transactions. I negotiated billion-dollar developments for clients. Yet, somehow my own husband had convinced our friends that I needed him to manage my affairs. Everyone laughed. Everyone believed him. Everyone except my mother. After one family dinner nearly a year earlier, she'd quietly washed dishes beside me. Has Ethan asked about the beach house again? I smiled. He likes it. She kept rinsing a plate. No. She looked directly at me. He likes owning things. At the time, I defended him without hesitation. Now, sitting beside him in the car, I could almost hear her voice. Ethan glanced toward my phone lying in the center console. It buzzed once. His eyes immediately shifted. Who was that? I haven't checked. You probably should. His answer came too quickly. He wasn't curious. He was anxious. I picked up the phone. One unread message. From Mr. Langford, my mother's attorney. Without opening it, I locked the screen again. Aren't you going to read it? Ethan asked. I can wait. His fingers tightened around the steering wheel. I'd read it now. I smiled faintly. It isn't going anywhere. For the next several miles, he barely spoke. His confidence had developed the smallest crack. He couldn't tell whether I knew something. He couldn't tell whether the attorney had already contacted me. And uncertainty was making him uncomfortable. Just before we turned onto the private coastal highway leading toward the beach property, my phone buzzed again. This time I opened the message. Only 5 words appeared on the screen. Do not explain anything yet. I locked my phone without another word. What did he say? Ethan asked. I looked straight ahead through the windshield. You'll find out soon enough. The iron gates of the beach house came into view, standing exactly where they always had against the backdrop of the Pacific. Beyond them, the 3-story home overlooked the ocean, its floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the late afternoon sun. My mother used to say the house wasn't valuable because of the price tag. It was valuable because 4 generations of our family had celebrated birthdays, weddings, and holidays there. Ethan saw something else entirely. He parked the SUV and smiled. This is where everything changes. I stepped out without answering. As we walked toward the gate, I noticed 2 luxury SUVs parked across the street. Ethan followed my gaze. Oh, right, he said casually. I invited a couple of people to stop by. I raised an eyebrow. Today. My business partners were already nearby. I figured they'd like to see the property. His business partners? On the afternoon of my mother's funeral? He hadn't simply planned to take control of my home. He wanted witnesses. Within seconds, Mark Sullivan and Jason Reed crossed the street. Both were developers Ethan had worked with for years. Vanessa, Mark said awkwardly, I'm sorry about your mom. Thank you. Jason shook my hand before looking at Ethan. You ready? Ethan grinned. Absolutely. He wanted an audience for his victory. He walked confidently to the keypad beside the gate. This is the old owner's code, he joked. Then he entered 6 numbers. The keypad beeped. A red light flashed. Access denied. Ethan frowned. That's odd. He entered the code again. Another red light. Access denied. Jason shifted uncomfortably. Maybe you hit the wrong number. I didn't. Ethan carefully entered the sequence a 3rd time. The gate remained locked. His confident smile disappeared. There has to be a delay, Ethan muttered. He pulled out his phone and checked the note containing the code he'd programmed that morning. It's exactly right. He tried once more. The keypad emitted a louder warning tone. Unauthorized access attempt recorded. Mark looked at Jason. Jason looked at me. Neither man said a word. Ethan forced a laugh. They must be updating the software. I folded my arms. I wouldn't know. He stared at me. You don't seem surprised. I've learned not to be surprised by much lately. His jaw tightened. A white security vehicle rolled slowly toward the entrance. It stopped beside the gate. A uniformed security manager stepped out carrying a digital tablet. He didn't even glance at Ethan. Instead, he walked directly toward me. Good afternoon, Ms. Carter. His voice was calm and professional. My condolences for your loss. Thank you. He nodded respectfully before continuing. We received an alert this morning regarding unauthorized interference with one of the property's inactive access systems. Ethan stepped forward immediately. I'm her husband. The manager acknowledged him with a brief nod. I understand. Then he returned his attention to me. As sole authorized trustee, I wanted to notify you personally that every access attempt has been automatically documented. The words landed like concrete. Mark slowly looked at Ethan. Sole trustee. Jason frowned. I thought. Ethan interrupted. There must be some mistake. There isn't, the manager replied evenly. He tapped his tablet. The individual who altered the obsolete keypad generated a complete time-stamped activity log. Ethan's face lost what little color remained. Obsolete. The keypad connected to this entrance has not controlled access to the residence for several months. No one spoke. The ocean waves crashing against the cliffs suddenly seemed louder than the silence between us. The security manager opened a leather portfolio he had been carrying. He removed a sealed cream-colored envelope with my name written across the front in my mother's unmistakable handwriting. He extended it toward me. My instructions were very specific. I accepted it carefully. He looked directly at me and said, Your mother instructed us to deliver this only if today's events occurred. I stared at my mother's handwriting for several seconds before breaking the seal. The envelope was thicker than I expected. Inside was a neatly organized stack of documents, held together with a silver binder clip along with a folded, handwritten letter. Ethan took an involuntary step toward me. Vanessa, let's talk before you read that. I didn't answer him. I unfolded the letter first. My mother's handwriting was steady, elegant, and unmistakable. My dearest Vanessa, if you're reading this today, then my greatest fear wasn't wrong. Someone has tried to take what was never theirs. Please don't interrupt them. Let them finish revealing exactly who they are. I swallowed hard. Even after her death, she somehow sounded completely calm. Footsteps approached from behind. Vanessa. I turned to see Mr. Langford, my mother's attorney, walking toward us with a leather briefcase in one hand. I'm sorry I couldn't reach you sooner, he said gently. I nodded. You reached me exactly when Mom wanted you to. Ethan forced a smile. I'm glad you're here. Mr. Langford looked at him politely. I imagine you are. Ethan extended a hand. I think there's been a misunderstanding about the property's security. There hasn't. The attorney's answer was immediate. The misunderstanding is yours. Mr. Langford opened his briefcase and removed several certified documents. Approximately 8 months ago, he said, your mother instructed our office to begin restructuring ownership of the beach house. Ethan's expression froze. What restructuring? The property was transferred into the Carter Family Coastal Trust. He handed me the certified trust documents. Ms. Vanessa Carter is the sole trustee. I nodded quietly. Every page carried my signature. Every filing had been completed months before my mother's passing. Ethan looked from the papers to me. You knew. I did. His eyes widened. You never told me. No. His voice rose. Why wouldn't you tell your husband? Before I could answer, Mr. Langford did. Because trustees are under no obligation to disclose private trust administration to individuals who possess no legal authority over trust assets. Ethan's mouth opened. No words came out. The security manager tapped his tablet again. I believe one additional point should be clarified. He turned the screen toward Ethan. This morning at 8:17 a.m., someone attempted to replace the access credentials on an inactive keypad. He scrolled through the report. At 8:21 a.m., another unauthorized attempt was recorded. Another swipe. At 8:23 a.m., a third attempt. He looked up. The actual security system had already been replaced and disconnected from this keypad 4 months earlier. Ethan blinked. What? The keypad you modified no longer controlled entry to the residence. Jason slowly rubbed the back of his neck. So, Mark finished the sentence. You changed a code that didn't actually do anything. The security manager nodded. Correct. A heavy silence settled over the group. Ethan looked at me desperately. Vanessa, I only changed it because I thought. You thought what? I thought we should both have control. I held his gaze. Then why did you tell me, if you don't like it, we can end this marriage? His shoulders sagged. I didn't mean it like that. You did. No. You chose my mother's funeral. He lowered his eyes. There was nothing left to deny. Mr. Langford reached into his briefcase once more. There is another matter. He placed a slim folder on the hood of Ethan's SUV. Because the trust anticipated the possibility of unauthorized interference, every attempted alteration automatically generated a legal preservation file. Ethan frowned. A what? A complete evidentiary record. The attorney calmly opened the folder. Security logs. He placed one document down. Access records. Another. Timestamps. Another. Photographs from the surveillance system. Another. And authentication reports confirming the identity of the individual performing each action. Ethan stared silently at the growing stack of paperwork. Everything he had done that morning had been documented. Every second. Every attempt. Every failure. Mark politely took one step backward. Jason followed. Neither man looked Ethan in the eye anymore. They no longer saw a confident developer. They saw a man whose own actions had become evidence against him. Ethan looked toward me one last time. Vanessa, please. Before I could answer, Mr. Langford gently raised a hand. There is one final document your mother wanted read aloud. Mr. Langford carefully unfolded the final letter and looked at me. Vanessa, he said quietly, your mother asked that I read this exactly as she wrote it. I nodded. The breeze coming off the ocean carried the scent of salt water through the open entrance while everyone stood in complete silence. He began reading. To my daughter, my eyes immediately filled with tears. If these words are being read today, then someone has mistaken access for ownership. Ethan lowered his head. There is nothing wrong with sharing a home with someone you love. But the moment someone believes love gives them the right to control what belongs to another person, they stop protecting the relationship and begin protecting their own ambition. No one moved. Even the security staff stood quietly a respectful distance away. Vanessa, if this letter has become necessary, then I need you to remember something. Mr. Langford looked up at me briefly before continuing. I never distrusted marriage. I distrusted entitlement. A tear rolled down my cheek. I didn't wipe it away. The beach house is only a building. What matters is that you never surrender your peace simply because someone demands it. The attorney folded the letter carefully. That concludes your mother's instructions. For several seconds, no one spoke. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. I'm sorry. His voice cracked. I made a terrible mistake. I looked at him calmly. No. He frowned. This wasn't a mistake. His shoulders stiffened. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. I held his eyes. You waited until I buried my mother. I took one slow step toward him. You changed the security code on property that wasn't yours. Another step. You threatened to end our marriage if I disagreed. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. You planned this. He slowly looked away. There was nothing left to defend. Mark cleared his throat. Ethan. Ethan didn't answer. Mark looked at Jason before speaking again. I think we're leaving. Jason nodded immediately. So do I. Neither man shook Ethan's hand. Neither offered him encouragement. They simply walked back to their vehicles and drove away without another word. Watching them leave said more than any argument ever could. The audience Ethan had invited to witness his victory had instead witnessed his humiliation. Mr. Langford handed me the trust documents. Everything remains exactly as your mother intended. I carefully accepted them. The Carter Family Coastal Trust is irrevocable. He smiled gently. You are the sole trustee. No one else has authority over this property. I nodded. I understand. He continued. Our office has already preserved today's evidence. The unauthorized access attempts, the security records, the surveillance footage, and the digital authentication logs have all been secured. I knew exactly what that meant. As a commercial real estate attorney, I had spent years protecting clients from fraudulent claims. Now the evidence was protecting me. Ethan looked exhausted. I never wanted this. I met his eyes one last time. Yes, you did. He shook his head. I wanted us to build a future together. I answered quietly. You wanted control. Those 4 words ended the conversation. He didn't argue. He couldn't. The divorce proceedings began a few weeks later. Ethan's attempt to interfere with trust property became part of the legal record. The preserved security logs, time-stamped access records, and surveillance footage left little room for dispute. His reputation suffered almost immediately. Several investors quietly withdrew from projects they had planned with him. Business partners who once praised his confidence no longer returned his calls. The story that circulated wasn't about a successful developer. It was about a man who tried to claim ownership of property that legally belonged to someone else while his wife was burying her mother. The damage wasn't caused by gossip. It was caused by his own choices. For me, life slowly became peaceful again. Months later, I drove back to the beach house alone. The ocean looked exactly as it always had. The waves rolled against the shoreline with the same quiet rhythm my mother loved. I unlocked the front door. Not because I needed to prove ownership, because I was finally ready to come home. Inside, I left almost everything exactly as she had designed it. Her favorite reading chair remained beside the windows, overlooking the water. The photographs stayed where she'd placed them. The kitchen still carried the warmth of countless family holidays. Instead of turning the house into a symbol of conflict, I allowed it to become what my mother had always wanted. A place where family gathered because they were loved, not because they wanted something. Over the following months, I hosted quiet family dinners, celebrated birthdays with my nieces and nephews, and opened the home for charitable fundraising events supporting local community programs my mother had cared deeply about. Every time I walked through those rooms, I remembered something she once told me. Real security isn't a keypad, Vanessa. It's knowing no one can bully you into giving away your peace. Standing on the balcony as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, I finally understood what she had spent years trying to teach me. Ethan had changed a security code. My mother had protected my future. And that made all the difference.